Hey friends, this is Sacred Frames. Sean Palmer, Jeff Cook, Movie Mike Yager. We're talking about the Odyssey. The most anticipated, is this the most anticipated film of the year for you guys?
It's
Not
the sec-
anymore.
it's the second most for me. I think at the top of my scale is Dune
Mm-hmm.
3, um, which they appropriately did not call Dune Messiah, which we can talk about in December. But it is the movie that I have been looking for. I think it cements Christopher Nolan as the director of this very young century, for a couple of reasons that we can get into. And it was very much one of those must see in the first couple of days that it's out, um, ventures for me. Like half my family couldn't make it, and I was like, I'm going whether anyone else can go.
Were you able to see it in the full IMAX?
Not 70 millimeter, like not as God and Christopher Nolan, and but in a theater. Apparently, Mike and I saw it at the same time in two different theaters about 5 miles away from each other. So
Slick. How about you, Mike?
Well, yeah, I saw Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey for the second time last night, both in the, I think, close to preferred IMAX presentation here nearby. I currently have tickets to make a little short in state pilgrimage to San Antonio this coming Monday to catch it in the full 70 with a buddy, provided that I think currently. I know that there's a lot of projector issues going on kind of around the country. One of those happens to be at the Riverwalk. We've got some overheating they're working on a part, but things should be up and running. And maybe we can talk about that. Is there a something that is needlessly exclusive in terms of preventing a lot of your audience from getting the preferred format? But I all in all, I mean this is quite it's a lot of movie. We will get into it, but Christopher Nolan is a filmmaker that I've had a very close relationship with, stretching back to Memento in 2001. Like that was very much a what's the word I'm looking for. It was a conduit to the world of independent cinema for me. Like, so he was a director with what he did in terms of time and form. Really kind of changed a lot of the language, or intensified a lot of the language in terms of editing and how we could kind of break up these things. And he's continued to do that. I think this film is very much in dialogue with his whole filmography in some ways I'm excited to talk about. I think it's a great movie, one of his best, one of the year's best. Maybe we'll get into it. Yeah, good stuff. Jeff, you seem to be a little
I'm a little
cooler on
cooler.
it, so I'll just let you.
I'm going to agree
Yeah.
with Sean. I do think this cements him as director of the century, though. I think this was important for that. I love the scope here, love the artistry, love the scale, huge natural shots. I didn't even see it in IMAX, and still, and I love event movies, and just long for those kind of experiences for myself, for our culture, as kind of rallying points. We're going out and seeing a movie and talking about it. So, do I think it's a masterpiece? No. Masterpieces have great scripts. This felt like Nolan wanting to do a fun project after a movie that truly was a masterpiece, which was Oppenheimer. For me, this is a below average film for Nolan, which places it in the great pantheon for, most American film, I'm sure. But this would not be in my top five. There are truly exceptional scenes for me. Hades is amazing. The Sirens is amazing. Everything about Troy, especially when the PTSD comes in. But I think this movie is getting a lot more love because of the IMAX experience, the beauty of the cinematography. I think that's doing 85% of the work in terms of the affection I'm hearing from folks. And that would be my short take. But I got lots of critiques once we get there. But you guys, talk it up. What's the positives here?
Okay, so here, before we get into the positives, I do want to, because Sean has been on this kick as well in terms of really keying in on the script being the weakness of the film, and I want to give like you guys a chance to talk about this from the outset because I'm approaching at this from, I think, the only one who's read the Odyssey recently. Is that
Not
correct?
since ninth grade English.
Okay, so
It's been
Yeah.
35 years since
I've got some thoughts on some of the adaptive choices, but I think, get into what is your criticism with how this is scripted, or because I think it's helpful for the audience to note that some of the commentary about this particular version, drawing a great deal from Emily Wilson's translation. It's one of the newer, more contemporary in some ways, the first time that a woman has been the primary interpreter and translator of this historic text as well. Important note, but Nolan's version makes some very intentional choices in terms of like the colloquialism and making it very like, say, daddy. Like it's kind of a strip back, more of it gets away from the traditional narrative that many translations might kind of suffuse with some importance, the kind of bombast of it. So what are y'all thoughts just from a script standpoint? Because I'm hearing both of y'all.
My critique about the script is not that it's colloquial, and so I'm willing to go along with the folks who say this is Nolan's take on what Homer is trying to do, in that the poem in its time was colloquial. So I'm willing at some level to accept that. That's not my chief complaint about the script. My chief complaint about the script is like it's not that it's cheesy. It's just sometimes it's just not very good.
Yep.
And like I wanted the script to do the same thing that the visuals were doing. Like this was not what I would call like an elevated script by any stretch. Like it was very mediocre. And Nolan tells the story about writing the script and his son taking his Oscars out of his office at home because his son was like, you need to forget that you have these as you're writing this script. And I don't think that he did. I don't think that he forgot that he had them. And it was like, well, we can just put this here. And like, some of that is, I like that he tried to take this thing that is really elevated. There are very few people who had to read the Odyssey in 8th, 9th, 10th grade, whenever you had to read it, and enjoyed it. Like that was for probably folks like us who are in advanced level classes and we're like, this is so cool. And so he's trying to put the cookies on the lowest shelf, right? And I appreciate that. But I think most of the time it's just okay. And I think that shows up in the performances, in that you're watching this incredible movie. You're seeing these great actors, this incredible story, and you walk away, at least I walked away, feeling like there was no single performance that was outstanding. And I think that's because the script was so mediocre. Like the performances were good, but not great, because the script did not serve them well. But that's my only critique of the film. I think the script could have been 10% better, not 50 or 75% better, but 10% better.
For me, I'm moved easily by rhetoric and word, and I cried just once in the theater, and it was during the trailer for I Play Rocky. The directing and writing are two very different skill sets, and directors in Hollywood love to think that they are great writers. For some reason, they need to justify their art form by being the writers. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of men and women who are very skilled with literature degrees who don't have great jobs doing that work. You can have teams of people doing plussing on this for nothing, especially if you're spending $250 million on the film. the script is where it's at, and the Nolan the writer is letting down Nolan the director, for in my view, over and again here, because I'm not moved. I don't care about the characters. I cared about the dog a little bit, but I don't care about Odysseus's men. I don't. There's nobody really that I'm caring for, except for a man who's proven to be, a war criminal by the end of the movie. Is really the only person whose story I seem to have any affection for. Mm-hmm. What'd you say, Mike?
I find this fascinating. I find it fascinating because I will give you this. I don't think y'all are giving him full credit. I think he is a terrific writer. Maybe not necessarily in terms of dialogue, which is I think what y'all are keying into. I think what Nolan is a very incredibly gifted writer at is in terms of the writing of ideas and the writing of structure. Like I think the structural choices that he makes in the course of adaptation are really what I think give this very strong scaffolding. I think about the choice of framing the remembrance of these various events in Odysseus around the framing device of him being on the island with Calypso, and he's been shipwrecked with Charlize Theron for the past 8 years and does not seem to be in much of a rush to make it home. We'll say, who can blame him?
Poor guy.
Poor guy. Yeah, exactly. But I think it does something really canny in that the poem does start out similarly with him on Calypso's island, and I can't remember if it flashes back to there or not, but that being the ground at which he begins to remember these fragments that he's lost, having been eating the lotus over these past 8 years. And then we're seeing those events happen in parallel as we're jumping back, and he's recollecting now his wife and what's leading him back to Ithaca. So I don't want that to get lost, that's a part of the screenwriting as well. And I will forgive there being some stiltedness even in the dialogue because of the nature of what he is adapting. It is very archetypal. And so I don't necessarily view these as characters as much as types that are pointing at more elemental human categories to begin with. So maybe I'm like approaching it from a different vantage from the outset.
Got anything, Sean?
No, I think you're right insofar as my issue is not with the script writ large, but with the dialogue. And when I couldn't find, and I wasn't looking for it, but it's not the line delivery. So when I'm seeing Tom Holland or Anne Hathaway or Robert Pattinson on the screen, I was like, oh, it's not the line reading. It's not what they're doing. So it must be the dialogue that they were given. And there aren't any moments script wise. And remember, this is a film that I really like. It would be a 5-star film for me. It's a 4.5 because of the script, because of the dialogue. But I don't remember any time thinking like, oh, that was poetic. Like that was well written, well delivered.
Yeah.
Like there are, I don't think people are going to quote lines from this movie going forward. And like I quote lines from Tropic Thunder. Like it's it's just like the dialogue moves the story along, but it doesn't capture it. At least it didn't for me. It didn't capture me at any time. And all three of us are writers, right? And so this is the kind of thing that we care about, that we notice, that makes a difference to us. Like how is language being deployed in the storytelling process?
Agreed. The one thing I would say,
You had a thought on the tip of your tongue there, Jeff.
One thing I thoroughly agree with you, Mike, in terms of like, I would consider what you're talking about, Mike, as editing. And absolutely, this is not only stellar editing. I think the way that time is used in this movie is better than any other Nolan film for me. I thought it was masterfully done. I really got into the way that he employed Troy and skipping forward to Odysseus on the island and how everything was interacting. I really thought it was well done. I knew exactly where I was every single time. But in terms of the dialogue, really, there's one line in the Sirens scene that I think is sticky. And I thought that the monologue between Odysseus and Penelope at the end, where he's recounting some stuff, it was worthwhile as exposition for his experience, but nothing in there as I read it down is sticky. But the Siren stuff was good. And some of the Hades stuff, again, I thought was really good. But other than that, this could have gotten plussed by some folks and really made it. I didn't care about the characters again, and that comes from the dialogue, I think.
But again, this is Sorkin and Molly's game, right? I trust Aaron Sorkin with any script in the world. When you watch Molly's Game, he shouldn't be directing, and which has something to say about the social reckoning that's going to be coming out of this. Yeah. But like when I'm looking at my daughter, who is a fabulous writer herself, at the end of this movie. And we both say to one, like almost at the same time, like, if Nolan had Aaron Sorkin write this script, this might be the greatest movie ever made.
I have one other.
See, I disagree. I think that there's something about Sorkin that he is wanting to be too clever by half every time he puts the pen to paper. Every single time, like he's trying to like find like what's the smartest way I can say this, and that's not what Nolan's concern is here. Like he it's when Cersei, or not Cersei, when Calypso is talking to Odysseus, it's like, how do you know that Penelope has remained faithful? And he says, I don't know, I feel. Like it's one of the key lines in Tenet. Like, it's like, you don't know it, you feel it. Like, this is kind of Nolan's new thing over the course of certainly the past decade. He has become like, he's kind of rejecting narrative for the most part. He's wanting to get to this, like this emotion that can't really be articulated as much as it needs to be depicted, and depicted through almost this broken mirror. Like, so I say, like, you saying who is plussing it, Jeff, to your point, like, I want to say that, like, Hoyt van Hoytema, the cinematographer, is plussing it. Jennifer Lame, the editor, who he's been working with since now Tenet and Oppenheimer and now the Odyssey, having a very different editing language than his previous films. Like, I think about like the score, my goodness, our boy is going to win his fourth. Yeah, he's going to win his fourth Oscar in as many films probably coming up here. Like, those are all the collaborators.
We all agree with that. I think we all agree with that, Mike. We're just saying, like, all of those things are excellent, like fabulous. But then the script is not excellent. It's very good, but it's not excellent. And there are times the very good, when very good collides with excellence, you can tell that the very good is dragging down the excellence. Like that's my walk away from the movie. Like, oh, there are no notes in terms of editing, even in terms of casting, because I've kind of kicked around like who else I would rather have. And if you're gonna leave a beach with Charlize Theron, yeah, like it needs to be that you're going to Anne Hathaway. Like, that's just like plus across it. And like every now and then you're like wrenched out of that world by a script that doesn't do the rest of the movie much favors. Like, it's just, this is what I'm saying. It's not as good as the rest of the movie is good. And I would disagree with Jeff on this. I actually do think it's a masterpiece. Like, you throw that up against the constellation of stars that is the rest of the movies that have been made in the last 20 years. And it's got to be one of the 10 best films made in the last 20 years.
Execution wise.
Now, yes, like, and so whether it's in the top 3 or top 5, that's going to come down to different people's individual feelings and what they find important. And this is like, I think Oppenheimer is one of my favorite movies ever, like hands down, period. And it's up there as like, this is and it's a masterpiece for me, not only because of what it is, but because the way it did what it did in terms of the way that it was made, with all the practical effects, with the use of forcing a change in our imagination, or at least some people's imagination, through the casting. No one's ever done this before, right? No one has ever said, let's do the whole Odyssey. Like you get pieces of it. And you can tell who hasn't actually read it ever, by the conversation online about what people like and didn't like. This is an undertaking that I don't know that Christopher Nolan will ever be able to top. There is no bigger story to tell, and he did an excellent job doing it across the board. Maybe the script stuff is a little nitpicky for some people. I understand that. But I did think multiple times, like, there were a couple of cringe moments in the dialogue where I was like, I wish you had a friend on that one.
We're going to have to come back to whether or not this is the greatest story that Christopher Nolan could pick up. I think this story is relatively small, and I will have Plato to back me up on this, who thought the same. But there is the thing that I really want to hit is something you touched on, like, the casting here. On one front, these are the greatest actors in the world, and I'm not moved by the dialogue. So that would, I think, showcase some of the script problems. But also, just to say it, I walked out of the movie thinking there were 2 severe miscastings, and there are 2 actors I adore. Tom Holland in Spider-Man is my most anticipated film. Completely wrong for this part. And I thought my man Matt Damon, completely wrong for this part. I walked out thinking, you know who would have crushed this role is Christian Bale, who is another friend of Nolan's. Turned on immediately the commentary from the Midnight Boys, and one of the commentators, that was the first thing he said. I was like, we're on the same page. I think Christian Bale would have crushed this role and maybe brought a different kind of weight to it. I felt like Matt Damon felt at times thin in this role and not believable. He didn't strike me as the leader of men that you're supposed to think Odysseus is, and that was my takeaway. But I think it needed some other kind of presence, in my view.
Okay, I'd love to hear Mike's take, just based on the face he made when you said that about Matt Damon. It's one thing when people say like, oh, I didn't like this casting, but you have to go back and look at, like, okay, you don't like X, but who would you have instead? And Christian Bale has come up in multiple conversations, and I think that's because he's taller, and like people equate tall with leadership. But I'm thinking, like, who in the Nolan universe, who of the Nolan players, and it would have to be Christian Bale or Hugh Jackman. And they bring a kind of gravitas to Odysseus that maybe Matt Damon lacks, but what Matt Damon has that those other 2 don't have is Matt Damon is so incredibly likable, and you have to like this guy or this story doesn't work. Like, you can't think that he's a great military leader or a great king. You have to like him, because what the story is going to give you for 3 hours is steady beats of why you shouldn't like him.
Yeah.
And like, and so you have to be, when you sit down in your seat, you have to be bought into that guy. And I think that's what Nolan was looking for. This is a guy that we're bought into. And he needs to be strong, but not the strongest. I love the fact that, Agamemnon is portrayed in his armor, right, as so grand and so big, and Damon fits what in an ancient state where you are, was it a vassal king? Is that the right word? I can't remember. Where you're paying tribute, right, and all of that. He's perfect for that because he's smaller, but he's strong. Like he's, and so I thought it was fine. I don't think there are very many other people who could do it. You have to see him. You have to look at him and go like, this is a man who is still strong, but it's a lot of used to be stronger.
Yeah. I agree with all that. And part of this, I think you're saying you need somebody who's likable, even though we find out how horrible his character is throughout. I think that's right.
Yeah.
That may be also a failure of the Enterprise overall, and something I think really worthy of critique. The person that came to my mind first, aside from Christian Bale, is somebody like Winston Duke. I think would have nailed that kind of very strong, very likable, comes across as just owning the stage whenever he's on film. And I don't know. I didn't get into Damon. So for what that's worth.
We got to hear from Mike about this. But
there's a kind of a joke in the poem, a famous joke in the chapter with the Cyclops, where Odysseus fools him by saying that his name is Nobody. So the Cyclops, shouts out, "Well, nobody hurt me," right? And I think that there is part of the archetypal nature of the text and this genre as a whole. Like it is casting what we know as an everyman, right? Like Tom Hanks is one of our great everymen, Jimmy Stewart, before him. Like Matt Damon is very much an actor in that tradition, and I would say that he is very perfectly situated for this part for that reason, whereas Christian Bale does not read to me as someone who's trying to get home for the right reason. Maybe it was like Matt Damon. Odysseus is a man who's doing the right thing for the right reason, or at least he senses that he is, or he is. We realize why he is haunted by the memories that are slowly coming back to him over the course. And I see Matt Damon as someone who projects a kind of a baseline decency and kind of an ordinariness that actually
there's a
serves
vulnerability.
Well. Absolutely.
There's a vulnerability to him that someone like Hugh Jackman or Christian Slate,
and I think it's really
have.
It's critical for this part, and because it's so much. And like, I want to kind of get us into like the main thematic meat of it, because Nolan continues to come back to these stories of homecoming. Right? Like guys that got to get home. Interstellar, stuck out in space, got to get home. Inception, stuck across the ocean, got to get home through, this heist. Odyssey, same way. Like even, Memento is its own kind of like, I'm working through this elliptical, broken time structure in order to get back to something that has been lost. And we need to be on that road with him as well. Like, and so he taps into, like, it's the same Matt Damon of The Martian. Like it's, he is someone that we are on the road with and can see ourselves as not necessarily an equal to in terms of leadership, what have you, but someone who seems like they are a colleague, someone who treats me as a friend. Like he doesn't look at his fellow soldiers as underlings. Like he sees them as brothers. Like that's a big difference between a Bale or how like Robert Pattinson plays Antinous, for that matter. Like people who only see these others as instruments to their own furthering.
Man, I had a different take on
that. I'm good with the casting. What's that,
I had
Jeff?
a different take on Odysseus's care for his men. I know it's kind of shown. Didn't move me. His care. He does care about that dog, but I don't think he cares about the men. But
okay, we get it. You weren't moved, Jeff.
home is a moral destination, though, I think is really worth talking about. And what's interesting is this is one of the places that Nolan chooses to skew from the text. Odysseus gets home. But Ithaca's not his home because he leaves immediately. He was supposed to get home, and he leaves. But that's not what happens in the book. He stays in the book. Home is where Penelope is,
Yeah.
and that's a different kind of conception of home. I thought worth talking about. Mike, you brought up this as a moral destination.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Sean.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we're obviously going to spoil a several thousand-year-old text and Nolan's Odyssey along the way here, but like, we can't really go further without talking about the primary framing, like what he makes the key thematic point of his film. Like, it's all over the posters. The movie starts with the Trojan Horse. It ends with the Trojan Horse. And what he seems to suggest along the way is that this great trick, this, what Odysseus has done, he's come up with this incredible military gambit that we're going to hide all our men inside this horse and drop it off as a gift to Athena, to the temple, to get us behind the walls of Troy, where then we will sack the city. And this is framed from the outset as a complete destroying of what the film calls Zeus's law, right? The laws of hospitality, where you enter my home and I make sure that you have food to eat and a safe place to lay your head, and you in turn promise not to do me any harm as well. And so we have hospitality and a home in Ithaca that has been broken. The contract between people has been broken. And so the home that he thought he is going home to is not the home that he left, but it has been changed in these 20 years, in part because of the warfare that he was central to, and this great sin against his fellow man. So like the home is not only just the geography, it is, can I name that I have been a part in tearing apart the fabric of humanity? Like, this is why the film is in dialogue with Oppenheimer. It's very much looking at the bomb. What hell hath I wrought?
Yeah. So, and this was my piece for Good Faith Media, right? Is essentially what Mike is saying, that he has broken something at the heart of the world. And, the three of us good pastors that we are will know that in the ancient world, what the importance of hospitality, like there aren't that many hotels, like you go and check in when you are traveling. And so there is something very core about welcoming strangers. And Odysseus uses this thing. And so a gift also in the ancient world was, when you gave someone a gift, it wasn't just a gift to that person, it was a gift to the gods. And so Odysseus uses this gift to Troy as a means of destruction, and that sets him off on he breaks something in the world, and that which leads him to keep breaking things in the world. So you get the scene with the Cyclops and like the unnecessary violence toward the Cyclops. You get and it just keeps spinning out of control until he comes to terms with who he is as a human being. So he's got one view of himself as a human, right? And this is the guy who, like, we're not going to take everybody from Ithaca to go to war. We're going to draw lots, and we're going to be fair. And he's got a view of himself, and that view of himself has to break down before he can come to himself, to realize, like, oh, this is actually who I am. And so he is attacked by everyone he meets on each of the islands. And then when he gets to Calypso, he is used by, like he is used on that island. He's constantly dealing with who he actually is. And I can't remember which kind of theologian who says it. He says like coming to yourself is having the floor beneath you collapse, and then the floor beneath that collapse, and then the floor beneath that collapse, until you're left with only the identity of the beloved.
Deconstruction, baby.
And so this is what's happening to him throughout the film, is the floor keeps collapsing, and you think, oh, I've done my work, or I've made my sacrifice. And in the book, when yeah, in the book, he's an evil worse person in the poem.
Yeah.
um, like he is used and being used until he finally gives himself up to the sea, which is in, Nolan has him falling off this makeshift raft that looks like it couldn't carry a child 40 yards, which is a whole new baptism.
Mm-hmm.
And he arises a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And goes to confession, basically, which is what I kind of lightly argue in the piece. They don't give me enough words to make the full
confession
argument.
with his wife. That is,
Yeah.
his Catholicism
like-
comes out and as you're saying it, I didn't notice that. That's good because that's what is that called?
Yeah,
the
like
conversation
she-
between yourself and the priest.
Oh, Mike would know. He's Catholic.
The
Was
screen.
Catholic.
Anyway,
Was
but that's what's going on there. That's good.
You never leave. You never leave, Mike. You're, yeah. If my daughters were
We
here,
will
they
we
could
will
tell
come
me
back
that.
to the confession because that's the crux of the film. That whole final interaction with Penelope and Athena.
But yeah, so home as a moral destination is what you're talking about, what you mentioned, and I find that really fascinating because it is like Mike said, like that's been Nolan's story in multiple films for a while now. Is a man trying to connect or reconnect with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's not odd that Nolan works with his wife and they travel all over the world together, wife and kids. And I think for him, like that, and I think it was a great message. Like, what's the most heroic thing you can do? For a man to do is to return and connect with his wife and children.
Yeah,
Again,
and another way to
he's
say
trying
that, Jeff,
he's trying to say it's super primal. Like this is what we're made for.
and another way to say that, Sean, is remember who you are. Like remember who you promised to be and to become as well, right? Like I think that the what makes the scene with the sirens so heartbreaking in his way as Odysseus has ordered his men to tie him to the mast of the ship so he can hear the siren song while the rest of them shove their ears with wax. Otherwise, they'll be, and we see one of them jumps off the boat after the sirens because there's just these words in the music that just entices you. But what is, it's what he says, let me see, all the things you want most and all the things you wish you never wished for, like the delicious itch under the skin. Like talk about the poetry. What you most can't have is what you already had. And Odysseus says this, like, what did the song sound like? It was the song of all the promises that I didn't keep. Right? It told me that I didn't want to go home. Like that's what he's really facing is that central question that like Calypso asks him, like, no, actually, do you want to go home? do you want to be this person, or have you been changed irrevocably by this journey? Or can you recapture something older, truer about who you are and what you left behind and what needs you desperately to return because it's falling apart in your absence? Like, absent fathers.
I found that question really fascinating. Like you don't want to go home. And it's like, why would he not want to go home? And what I'm left with, I'd love to hear your reflections on that, is that he doesn't want to go home to Penelope, thinking that he was the man she came at war. And like, I don't want to, like, is there just a fundamental fear of this is a place and this is a woman that mean the world to me? And who will I be in her eyes once she knows what I've done? And so he has to actually disguise himself in order to come to terms with that. I don't know. It was a passing
I
thought
think
in the
that's
theater.
spot on. And it again invites for me, why am I cheering for this guy? And because it's especially in the year 2026, cheering for a war criminal to get home so that he can kill 108 people in his living room isn't necessarily the thing that I'm thinking, you know what, that's what our summer blockbuster is going to elevate. I do understand, like I want it to be the case that there's forgiveness, repentance, restoration for men who have done very violent things in acts of war overseas. I was a university professor. I have heard stories from students that are truly terrible in terms of what they were wrestling with, and there's so many of those who I've met and know, and perhaps you have as well, who took their own lives with memories of those things. Don't want to undercut that or say that there's like a valuelessness here in terms of how do you find restoration, but I really wrestled with what the movie is trying to convey by elevating this man as the hero. I think you're like, so much work that we talked about earlier, Matt Damon being cast, is to cover up some really problematic things with his character and with his very bad violent choices. And at the end of the day, all he's trying to do is come home to a lover, which I can respect, but why am I cheering for this guy?
Well, I don't know that we're cheering for him, but it is asking us to see ourselves in him. Like it has a ending that's not unlike something like Planet of the Apes, right? Like so one of the ideas that the movie brings in, that the text I don't believe highlights in the same way, is this the matter of the sea people, right? This idea that in the Bronze Age antiquity, that people came from the sea and laid waste to all of what had been known as civilization to that point. And like, history doesn't know quite what happened, but what the film seems to suggest, and it's from the outset, like the very first town they happen upon, as they, even before they get to Polyphemus's, the Cyclops' island, they pull up and the people are already burning their own huts because they're like, well, we saw you coming. and we realize, oh, the sea people was us.
Yeah.
It's what Cersei says when she is fearing for her life, and ultimately she curses his men, turns them into pigs. But when Odysseus asks, did they harm you? Her answer is no, they would have.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this happen. They would have. Like there is a fear that's gripping the entire region, and it comes back to this law, Zeus's law, that has been set aside.
I would echo, I don't think Nolan sees Odysseus as the hero. I think he sees Odysseus as the protagonist. I think this movie sees Sinon as the hero. And this is a young person who the nation sacrifices and lies to in order to engender their sacrifice. And it is Sinon who actually gives Odysseus, through the meeting at Hades, like, this is what this actually is. Like, it's Sinon who gives Odysseus, this is what we have to reckon with as human beings. Like, what you did to me makes sense in a certain kind of world, in the world that you inhabit. And that's why at the end, like, when, like, that's why Robert Pattinson is giving his shame back. Like, it's Sinon who is the hero. That's like the people that we invite to believe in us and believe in this story, but we are also willing to sacrifice at the drop of a hat to meet our aims. Like, those people are the ones that we ought to pay attention to. Those people are the actual heroes of the story. And this is like, Odysseus is not a hero, but he is us. This person is like, dude, I've been in this war for 10 years. I want to go home. Let's break everything so that we can win this thing and go. This ends justifies the means sorts of approach to life that he has to finally get to. And then he says, he has this moment is like, well, Agamemnon's going that way. He's like, I'm tired of following Agamemnon. I'm going this way. And like that's the leads to one calamity after another. Um, like these men on the boat when they meet Cersei, like, are they pigs or have they been turned into pigs? Like, it really is a film about formation and what just doing the things that we feel like we have to do to move along in life, what that actually turns us into. And then Tom Holland, who plays very sheepish and young, I think it's appropriate. He's going to have to do something different in his next movies. Like, you can't be a teenager forever. Like, he literally is pining for a dad that he never knew, but the dad that he gets is not the dad that that left. And so I think, I mean, that's why this is such a powerful story throughout history, and why we've all had to read it in school at some level, is because it is a mirror for who we actually are, and how the world forms, and how the gods form us, and our interaction and belief in what the gods do and don't do. That's what makes it great. And because Nolan, here's the thing about the Odyssey. If Steven Spielberg decided tomorrow, like, let's do the Odyssey again, it would be a different story. And I think that's what's powerful about the story itself. And Nolan is doing an Odyssey for 21st century Western world. So I don't think Odysseus is the hero. I think he's just the protagonist. Like, we want him to get home. And part of why we want him to get home is because we see what it's doing and will do to Penelope, to be absent a husband.
We should talk about Penelope at some point as well.
And no, I think this is a good place to. I had another, like, kind of thematic suggestion here along the lines of the homecoming aspect of it, like the father son, or like specifically the absent father via son element is again all over Nolan's filmography. We can go back to Interstellar, or, like, you know, Batman. Like the Batman trilogy is what happens when dad never comes home.
Yeah,
Like, truly, like, that's.
It's like let's just stop and be like, and I wanted to say, especially for any females listening, how much storytelling, the majority of storytelling throughout the history of time has been fathers and sons. Mm-hmm. Like, let's just deal with that, like, front and center. Like, that's what so many stories are about.
Right. And so it is approaching it like in terms of, like, history and antiquity, like, it is a patriarchal text, like, from the outset, like that needs to be named. But at the same time, like, there is an important word about not just formation, but specifically Christian formation, like, for us in this category. Cause, like, what we're talking about is the willingness or the unwillingness to see the divine light in the other. Like, it's what Antinous can no longer see. He's like, oh, is this plate liquor a god? Are you a god, plate liquor? And meanwhile, like, Telemachus, he's with Mentor, you know, the whole time. And Mentor is very much a figure who it seems is the guise that Athena has taken repeatedly throughout the text of the Odyssey. And when he says, you know, you have wise eyes, you have Athena's eyes, or when we see a beggar at the beginning of the film, then send Telemachus to Sparta to get word from Menelaus. Like, if we are listening, if we have eyes to see, like, we recognize God's activity in our midst and God's, like, interacting with us directly in our midst. And we know what it means when, you know, Hebrews 13:2, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without even knowing it. This is the law of Zeus, which is our law of hospitality and our way of seeing the world and God's continued activity in and through the lives and the eyes of the other.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that because so many of those are the themes that I wrote about in my piece. So I'm going to say that you're right about all of that.
I hadn't read it yet, but great job.
I quote Hebrews 13 in that. So like I think that's one of the themes is hospitality, and I don't think that you can distance that from our cultural moment and our historical moment, especially in the West, where residences of Nolan live, where Nolan has residences rather, both in the UK and the US. And I do believe he is saying that something fundamentally is broken within people who do not display hospitality. And he's trying to help us define hospitality as different than hosting, which is what most people in the West think hospitality is, like having people you like in your space and like feeding them dinner or being nice to them. But this hospitality as this radical openness to the other and this embedded trust in the other, that these people are of goodwill. And so in the poem, if I'm remembering correctly, from the early 90s, that hospitality is like, I will treat you openly and you will do me no harm. And I think that's Nolan's way of saying, without this, the world corrodes and collapses in on itself, because we will all find ourselves to some degree or another at some point or another where we are dependent upon the hospitality of strangers.
I think y'all are making good points.
And if I had a question, I have a question for Christopher Nolan. I really want to know if he has become a cynic about the world over the course of like literally the past decade. Like I think about Interstellar as a film is all about this message of love and of like benevolent goodness being sent back into the past from the future in order to bridge this relationship, right? And just like not even 6 years later, Tenet looks at the future with such, or is the future looking back at the past with such despair that its only recourse is to shoot bullets at us to destroy the past to save the future. Like I think it's so fascinating that these films in very different cinematic language, in like this, kind of action film in Tenet and Oppenheimer, this biopic, and now Odyssey, this great epic, are really continuing to wrestle with the same themes.
He's joining Spielberg.
You may
there.
not be able to see me. I'm cut out now. Yeah, I know you guys hate when I do the auteur theory.
So he can join Spielberg in his cynicism. We need aliens to save us. What is then like? Let me grant like that. I really like your pitch for the meaning of the symbols here. Is there anything that is being said aside from "here's the problem"?
Is he offering a solution?
Yeah.
Are you asking if he's offering a solution?
Wisdom to be found here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I left the theater thinking, this is why husbands should listen to their wives. Because he ends up in the end doing what she suggested they should do at the beginning. What she's like, dude, let's just get in a boat and like sail for the sun. Like,
fair way to go.
Like it takes them 20 years to come around to like, dude, like, let's just check out. Like, so I think that's, and that I joke about that, but that might be a legitimate answer to your question, which is to pay attention to the voices that we don't pay attention to because we've become so entrapped in the matrix, right? In the idea of this is what I should do. This is what's expected. He leaves to go to war and he knows it's going to be at least a decade before he sees her again. And she's like, dude, that's not what either one of us signed up for. Like, it is okay to press against the system, especially when you have the resources to press against the systems. Like we can envision an alternative future. And I think that's what he is. I actually think that's what he's saying is that are there voices in your life who are offering an alternative future? You don't actually have to go through all of the pain and heartache and destruction to get to that future if you would attune yourself to those voices. And so he goes into exile at the end of the movie, right? And so that is all rosy, but he's now estranged from his son. And so is also Penelope. So I do think there's something there for him to for him to say, like, there is a grounding in life of choosing what's actually important. And this is kind of as the old guy of this group, one of the things that I learn every day is like, so many of the things that I thought were important, even like 5 or 10 years ago, coming to realize like, not only was that not as important as I thought it wasn't important at all. And like that I did have options, but I didn't think I had options because like, this is what you just have to do at this point in life. So, I do think he's offering options in so far as to envision a preferred future for yourself that is absent of the constraints of what you think have to be. And these are the things that really matter. Your partner, your children, if you have them. Like it very much goes Ecclesiastes at the end. Like there are probably 5 things in life you need to focus on. And most of those 5 things actually have names.
Mm-hmm.
It asks the question, not just what home awaits me, if indeed I am able to get home, but what home am I willing to create for the sake of others as well? Like there's the line about the, what's the clear, you get the clearest view from a man from below. It's when Odysseus is talking about why he has to be in disguise and come into this setting as a beggar, because he knows then how Antinous and the other suitors are treating him, and so it becomes a two-way dialogue. Like it's not just the hospitality being created by the man and woman, the family of the house, so to speak, but it is the hospitality that is being agreed upon by those that are entering the house themselves. Like it says, what does Telemachus say to Antinous? It's like, what's one more beggar at the feast? Like, you've been here for 3 years. You've been, just eating my family's livestock and wine and making this royal scene of yourself the whole time. And what Penelope says is, no, take the bow and show me who you are. Who are you going to be? Like, I think the question then becomes for all of us. Like, it's that recognition that, like, I want to talk about the visual. So Zendaya plays the character, or we at least think that she's playing the character of Athena, and the only one of the gods or goddesses that is depicted in the film. But what we come to find out is that she may be just this young priestess, or even just a young commoner during the sack of Troy that Odysseus sees murdered in front of him. And so she becomes the visual marker of this great sin. And he reaches not only across the screen to Penelope, but reaches his hand literally across to Athena. And that's the confession. That's what all of us have to acknowledge is, no, I was a part of it. I violated all which is most sacred between people. I turned a fight into a hunt. I broke the fragile bonds between man. Like because it's not going to be the unseen gods that are going to turn the course of civilization. And it's not going to be Odysseus on his own, one man come to make the kingdom right. It is going to be all of us who come to view this world and our own, individual and collective odysseys through it in an entirely different light. Like that's, I think, what ultimately Nolan is leading us to try and get a visual for. Like it's very like elemental and mythic. I don't view it as just a narrative film in and of itself.
I think you both have your finger on what's intended there. I don't know that I have much else to say on this, to be honest with you. For the failures of the movie, that like as you're speaking, I'm like, this is really lovely. A beautiful picture. A lot of this, I don't think it's because I'm lacking insights into film or what's being conveyed, but I suppose I'm walking away from the conversation saying there's so much that's left to interpretation here of this sort, and I don't know, it's lacking for me on those fronts. Movie's 30 minutes too long, script issues. I haven't talked about female characters and how they're always subservient to the reactive needs of men throughout, except for the one sociopath who's poisoning soldiers and turning them into swine.
You think that's true of both Cersei and Penelope, that they lack agency?
I think that Penelope is wasted. In this, I love her performance. I don't think she has like what does she do that isn't in a reactive posture towards the needs, ambitions, and choices of the men in the story. Granted, that's the world, and what do you do with
Yeah,
that?
and so that's why it's hard to tell. That's why it's hard to tell these stories in the 21st century, right? So, because it's written in a world where women lack that kind of agency. I think Nolan gives Penelope as much agency as you can reasonably expect and keep the story out of some ditches. It's that same lack of agency that makes Cersei behave the way that she does. But you take someone like, oh my gosh, I can't remember her name, on Calypso, Charlize Theron's character.
Yeah, Calypso, yeah.
Yeah, so she is exercising a ton of agency. Like she's literally like just imprisoning him there. In the book, they both, like all of those encounters, they have much more agency. Like he willingly stays on in both those places for a long time for his own reasons, and they don't mind.
It's just
Yeah, he's a child with Cersei. He says, "Yeah, Cersei, I'll come to bed with you. Just no more magic tricks."
with Theron's character, even
So
though
I
she
think
has
like that's what,
agency, it's still the case that she's reactive to Odysseus. Like she's not self-actualized. She just doesn't find value in herself. Like there's nothing interesting there aside from what how she's reacting to a male.
yeah. I mean, but what else would you expect out of a story in this time period? I mean, like this is clearly pre-women's lib, Jeff. Like
Yeah, she says, I've been sitting on this throne for 20 years. Like I've been doing this thing. What do I need? Like he talks about like the bristles on Telemachus'
Bigger picture
chin, right?
here, Hollywood fails female characters. If you're like, there is an opportunity cost at some levels. If you're going to spend $250 million telling a story for the entire country to see and talk about, and this is what you give half the population, come on. Bad choice. Like it's just a bad choice. Then don't waste your time and our time.
I do need to call out, since I'm not going to allow us to finish this podcast without calling out Samantha Morton, who performs Cersei, and I want to say this because I think hers is a really terrific performance, and one that I have a sense maybe remembered come the end of the year. I'm really interested to see what a second viewing might do for that whole Cersei section, because she is the embodiment of this other form of PTSD. Like, I don't see her as a sociopath. I see her as a depiction of hurt people. Like, she is
She's a
someone
victim
who
in
has
that sense.
had violence done to
Yeah.
her. Absolutely. But I see her as taking that and turning it against, which I think is doing something interesting with, like this continued butting up against what are the hardships and obstacles toward hospitality, whichever side of the equation you find yourself on.
I don't think you're wrong in saying like all of her choices make sense given the character, given the situation she's in. If the best that we're offering females in our culture and the stories that we're telling is we should poison all the men because they're the problem, that's not an interesting story, nor is it morally formative or spiritually awakening in any.
Yeah, but you're in favor of it, Jeff. Like you.
Okay, so Jeff, if you didn't like that, you're really going to hate this, because I remembered what I was going to say vis-a-vis the ending, and what it may suggest is because I think it has a way too much in for you in common with our beloved One Battle After Another, because what it seems to suggest is Odysseus and Penelope, like, we just got to get out of here,
Yes.
and
Hand it off to the
we
kids.
adults, we grown-ups, we've kind of made a mess of
Exactly
things.
right.
But new King Telemachus, he's got his finger on the pulse.
The hip Gen's
These young
ears
kids are
going to
lead us.
God, that's a bad story.
Well,
Just
It was
right,
the
though. Mike, you're
final
right.
line of the film. I even had it written down. And our mistakes will once again be forgotten.
Yes, we don't matter at all. I forgot that was the moral message of these tentpole films that everyone is clamoring for, is that nobody matters. Nothing we do matters.
Jeff's really
I'm
big Mitch
so-
McConnell fan. Just is like, he's
He's
wishing him well. He's going to come back to work anytime.
The patriarchy in all its feudalistic forms will rule forever, and we have no agency.
I would like to say something about storytelling before we go, because I think storytelling itself is a theme of this film. And who gets to tell the story? It begins with Travis Scott as the bard, telling an oral story with full view that the Odyssey, for years and years and years and years and years, was an oral story. Travis Scott, who is from Houston, where Mike and I are, who filmed a video in the parking lot of the church we both used to work for. Which is a whole other story. Begins this movie with the recounting of an oral story, and is stopped. And like that just hit me, ton of bricks hit me. When you take the bracket of it begins with an oral story that is interrupted and ends with the line that you just were talking about, like, our mistakes will be forgotten. I do think is saying something about the stakes in which we give our own lives, which most of us, Richard Rohr has this thing in Adam's Return about how every man needs to come to terms with the fact that he is not that important. And you go on this incredible trip with Odysseus, and we are still left with this idea that our lives are unique in that there's no one like us and no one will ever be like us, but they are not all that different from one another. And that should be a point of connection and embrace. And we don't treat it that way. We treat the uniqueness of our lives as points of disconnection rather than connection. And I think Nolan is saying our will for violence, control, domination, Agamemnon's arrogance, right? Those are the kinds of things that break us apart. And when really the bonds of commonality and brotherhood, sisterhood should be the things that bring us together. Anyway, so I don't think it's incidental that it begins with a story interrupted.
And I guess this will be my kind of final word, because I think it's the last thing I may have that is worth saying. I really, really enjoyed reading Emily Wilson's translation over the course of the past couple weeks prior to seeing the movie. And I think what I was most struck by was it's kind of what you're getting at, Sean. It was in not necessarily the characterization, because there's not a depth of characterization in the poem itself, but in the choices that these individuals all make. Like, I saw their humanness, and I saw their humanness in contrast to the gods who were acting in their own kind of petty, backbiting ways, like human in their own ways. And I came to the end of it feeling like not less human, but actually more connected with this broader story that continues on. So like, it's, like, I think with all of us, we tend to, especially in the West, we tend to view ourselves as the hero, as the protagonist. But it's not until Cersei says, no, you got to give up all of that. You got to give up all of the striving and all of your strategies and your plans. No, you're a man who needs to control his fate, but I'm asking you to give yourself up to the sea, give yourself to the waves, give yourself to Poseidon and whatever punishment is awaiting you. Give up the fight, give up control, and live. Like,
Be baptized.
that's what I'm going to carry with me. Baptized.
Get baptized. which my tradition will love. But get baptized.
I struggle with the
Jeff, as the great hater of this movie, I didn't see what you gave it on Letterboxd yet. I don't know if you wrote your Letterboxd review.
I'm not.
We're going to give you the last word, because unfortunately for you, until March of next year at the Academy Awards, you are going to have to hear about this.
True. Well, it'll be like last year then. Sometimes you want,
or the year before when I had to hear about Honora forever.
sometimes you do want judgment and the restoration of all things and the return of the king with righteousness in his hand. And that's a great story. Robin Hood, Lord of the Rings, dare we say the New Testament. The Odyssey has that as a setup, and yet what I'm hearing here is we don't matter, lack of agency, give up control, let the will of the gods take you where it will. I'm in it for working my ass off to create a new heaven and a new earth, showing some flowers coming up out of the ground to showcase what the enormous potential of a human being fully alive is. I long for stories that move us in ways that reject these sorts of systems. And I granted there is a showcasing of the absolute waste of that sort of authoritarian monarchical power used in violent ways for self-serving ends for the elite. That's a story our culture needs to hear. As was said, hospitality is a huge thing, and we miss the fact not only that displaced people need a home, but that often the culture that we've created is the cause of them being displaced in the first place. That's a story for our world. The Return of the King should look something different, and I would like more stories that push into that. So, my last word. And more better
Make
women,
a better world.
Characters.
While we're
dialogue.
waiting on Daddy to come home.
Make a better world as we wait for Daddy to come home.
That's right. That's part of it. Holland is weak character. Man should be figuring this out while Daddy's away. Just can't get anything done, just like the rest of us. So is the church, isn't it?
It's Zeus's law. His hands are
Church
tied.
is just sitting there crying, weeping in its soup next to the guy who was with Daddy all those years, not doing a damn thing. All right, anyway. Love you guys. You guys are my favorite. I appreciate talking to you. Next time, we're probably hitting
great.
Spider-Man, and
Spider-Man.
gonna see.
It'll be a brand new day.
A brand new day.
All right. I'm Jeff Cook. Sean Palmer, the Movie Mike Yager. We'll see you next time.